Have you ever wondered what you would do if your life hung by a thread in a single terrifying moment, one ordinary night in a small New York diner? A calm waitress faced the unthinkable masked men stormed in, guns raised, chaos unfolded in seconds. Fear froze the room until she made a choice that could have ended in disaster or saved dozens of lives. Imagine it was you. Would you stay frozen in silence, praying to survive or risk everything to protect strangers you barely knew? And then there was Marcus Green, a millionaire who could have hidden behind his status, but instead stepped into danger with nothing but his will to shield others. Two lives collided under the gun's shadow, and what happened next shocked the entire world. This isn't just a story about a robbery. It's about courage, dignity, and the power of a decision when every second matters. So, as you listen, ask yourself, what would I have done if this story moves you? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And now, let's step into the night where everything changed. The streets glow with neon, a cold wind chasing down the sidewalks. People still rush in and out of bars and cafes. But inside the Riverstone Dinera little restaurant that stood for more than 30 years, the world feels different. Warm. Safe. Like you could almost forget the city outside never sleeps. Golden lights spill across polished wooden tables. The gentle clink of silverware mixes with the low hum of conversations, weaving together the familiar soundtrack of ordinary life. For Marcus Green, sitting at the window table, this moment feels like a rare pause. Marcus Tech CEO, self-made black millionaire, face once plastered on Finance magazine, looks nothing like the headlines here, just a tall man in a simple gray shirt, swirling red wine in his glass. He doesn't come to Riverstone for the food. He comes here because no one looks at him with judgment. No one asks the silent question, "Are you sure you can afford to be here?" A young waitress approaches, Emma Reyes, hair tied back, bright eyes, a kind smile. She sets a steak before him and says softly, "Enjoy your meal." Her voice is light as air. Nobody knew it would soon become the only sound keeping an entire room from collapsing. Marcus nods. He almost picks up his phone to check emails, then stops. Tonight, he just wants to sit in the calm, to let the simple noises around him wash away the weight he always carries, and then everything shatters. The diner door slams open. A freezing gust whips through. Metal clanks against the frame. A voice slices through the air, sharp as a blade. Everybody quiet. Nobody moves. This is a robbery. The room explodes into panic. Screams, plates crashing, people diving under tables, kids wailing, adults begging. Three masked figures storm inside. Long coats dragging across the floor. Black barrels of their guns sweeping the room. Their boots hit the tiles with heavy, brutal thuds, each one like a hammer striking the heart. Marcus freezes. His chest pounds. Memories flood him, being stopped in a hotel lobby, even with a luxury suite reserved, being refused a first-class seat because he didn't look VIP. No matter his wealth, no matter his titles, the world never let him forget the color of his skin. But this isn't suspicion. This isn't prejudice. Tonight, he stares down real guns, real death. Chaos swirls around him. People huddle, trembling. Phones and wallets slip from shaking hands. The whole diner feels like a hunted animal, waiting for the shot. And then Marcus sees Emma. She doesn't scream. She doesn't cry. She stands there, tray in hand, eyes steady, not defiant, not afraid, just calm Impossibly calm, it feels like slow motion. Her voice rises, clear and even, carrying across the chaos. Please, everyone stay calm. No one's going to get hurt. The gun cracks against a table, making someone faint, but Emma's tone doesn't waver. Marcus' throat tightens, his fists clench, and inside his mind, a single thought burns. How can this young woman, a waitress, so small, so ordinary, stand steady before a gun when I, a millionaire, a CEO who commands thousands, can barely keep from shaking in that moment? Marcus knows tonight will not be ordinary. Tonight will be fate. The shout still echoed through the cramped diner. 3 masked men, their guns glinting under the yellow lights, swept their weapons across the tables like invisible blades. A middle-aged man trembled, desperately pulling his wife beneath the table. Glass shattered on the floor. A child wailed, muffled by a mother's shaken hand. The aroma of food warm and inviting just minutes ago was gone, replaced by the acrid scent of fear. Marcus Green sat frozen. He had survived boardroom battles, grilling depositions, contracts worth hundreds of millions. Yet never not once had his heart thundered the way it did now. Each pounding beat felt like it might rip through his chest. He remembered his father's words when he was a boy, Marcus. You've got to be strong. Out there, the world will try every way it can to prove you're weak. His father had long since passed, but those words had become an invisible armor, carrying him to the top. And yet, here, facing the muzzle of a gun, that armor meant nothing. One of the robbers stepped forward, a voice like gravel wallets and phones on the tables. Now, shaken hands obeyed. Leather wallets, cell phones, jewelry clattered onto the wood. A man tried to hide his wedding band in his pocket, only to be kicked to the ground, his cry of pain slicing through the already taut silence. Marcus closed his eyes, breath ragged. Inside his head, a cruel voice whispered, "You could call someone. You could pay millions to make this vanish. But here and now, you're just a black man in the corner. If you stand up, will they even let you finish a sentence before they pull the trigger?" He opened his eyes and saw Emma Reyes, still standing, still calm, no tears, no screams. Her voice carried through the chaos, firm and steady. "Everyone, please, stay still. Don't fight back. Well, be okay." A young woman crouched nearby, sobbing, whispered, "You're not scared." Emma shook her head gently. Then, in one swift motion, she pulled a tablecloth down to shield 2 terrified children beneath it. A small gesture, but in this choking storm of terror, it flickered like a candle in the dark. One of the gunmen snapped, furious, "Hey, you don't move." The barrel swung toward her. Marcus held his breath. His body screamed to leap forward to shield her, but his legs felt bolted to the floor. He knew any sudden move could be the spark that unleashed gunfire. And deep down, a darker fear gnawed. If I stand, will they see me as the first threat? Will my skin alone be enough reason to shoot? Emma didn't flinch. Her voice came slow, deliberate. "I'm not fighting you. I just want everyone safe." A ripple went through the room. Heads turned, eyes wide. The waitress, the smallest figure in the diner, stood face to face with the gun, and somehow didn't break. Marcus' chest tightened. Shame, admiration, both crashing over him. Millionaire, a man who commanded thousands sat paralyzed, while a simple waitress dared to stand tall against death itself. Another gunman barked, rage boiling, "Shut up or ill shoot." The words cut like a blade. Silence slammed down. Even the sobs of the child were swallowed into the mother's arms, and still Emma's gaze didn't waver. She turned to the terrified crowd, giving the smallest nod, as if to say, "Well, be all right." Marcus felt his heart seize. He couldn't look away from her. One thought burrowed deep. Berna. Why is she so calm? And what's about to happen next? He knew this was only the beginning. Marcus Green had never seen eyes like that. Not defiant, not afraid, but something else like a still lake in the middle of a storm. Emma's eyes cut through the barrel of the gun, through the screams, through the trembling bodies curled beneath the tables. They seemed to whisper, "Don't be afraid. I'm here. We're going to get through this." And in that instant, Marcus saw himself reflected there, not the man he'd become, but the 12-year-old boy standing outside a white-only school. That boy wore a frayed uniform, heels of his shoes worn through, clutching a scholarship letter, yet at the gate, a guard had sneered, "You're at the wrong school. Kid, this isn't for the likes of you." Marcus had lowered his head, stayed silent, swallowed the lump in his throat, and now, with a gun pointed at the room, he sat silent again, his heart hammered. Part of him wanted to roar, "No, you're not that boy anymore. You're Marcus Green, CEO, millionaire, the man who turned locked doors into open roads." But another voice whispered coldly, "You're still afraid. You're still that boy, only in a more expensive suit." Sweat slid down his neck, his teeth clenched, and then his eyes found Emma again. She was still standing there, back straight, calm, no fame, no power, yet somehow stronger than everyone in the room. A gunshot cracked, one of the ceiling lights shattered, glass raining over the nearest table. The diner erupted into screams. A man dropped to his knees, clutching his head. Marcus' heart lurched. Emma didn't flinch. She turned her head, scanning the room, and spoke just loud enough to hear, "Everyone, breathe. Don't look at them." Her voice was steady, soft, but so firm it compelled even Marcus to obey. He drew a deep breath. The first moment he felt the terror tamp down, like a flame smothered by a gentle hand. In that moment, Marcus understood real strength wasn't in his bank account or his power. It was in holding yourself steady when the world collapses around you. And a ma waitress was doing what he'd never done. One of the gunmen moved closer, shoving his weapon into the face of an old man in the corner. "Hand over the cash." Now the old man's hands shook violently as he pulled out his wallet. Crumpled bills spilled across the floor. The gunman bent to scoop them up, sneering. "You think this pocket change buys your life?" Marcus saw the old man's trembling hands, and he saw his father again. His father, killed after resisting a mistaken arrest. Mistaken for a thief because of the color of his skin. Marcus bit down hard. A metallic taste of blood at the corner of his mouth jolted him awake. Emma looked at him quickly. Just a flicker, but her slight nod was enough. He understood, you can't stay seated. Not this time. He drew in a breath, fists tightening beneath the table. Hands that had signed contracts worth millions now trembled for a different reason, a decision. Stand up or stay silent. The air felt thick enough to choke on. The gun, the ragged breathing, the pounding heart in his ears. Marcus stood at the edge of a choice. If he rose, he might die. But if he stayed sitting, something inside him would die anyway. He whispered to himself, "Dad, I won't let them see me afraid again." The air inside Riverstone Diner was so heavy, it felt like you could slice it into pieces. After the warning shot, silence crushed the room. The ticking of the wall clock echoed, each second stretching into an eternity. Marcus Green sat frozen, but inside, a storm raged. His eyes locked on Emma Reischer's small frame standing firm in the chaos, and he knew if he stayed seated, he would betray his very soul. He drew a breath. Then, almost by instinct, Marcus slowly placed both hands on the table, ready to rise. The nearest gunman snapped instantly, weapon aimed at his chest. "Sit down. You want to die." Marcus stopped, heart pounding like a drum. That black barrel felt like a bottomless pit, swallowing his will. But he swallowed hard, forcing his voice steady. "I just want to hand over my wallet." He slipped a leather wallet from his suit jacket, placing it carefully on the table. But instead of letting go, he held it an extra beat like he was leaving behind something invisible. Because inside wasn't just credit cards. There was another card, matty black, with only a silver code etched across it. An emergency access credential issued to him when he signed a federal security contract. A key almost no one else in the world carried. The gunman snatched the wallet. Unaware, Marcus had already pressed a hidden switch along its edge. No sound, no light. But Marcus knew a signal had been sent. Satellites now had their location pinned. A chain of events had begun, far beyond the robber's awareness. He lowered back into his seat, exhaling softly.
"Get down! Everybody
Fear
get down!"
still gripped him, but beneath it, relief flickered. Emma glanced his way, catching his eyes. He said nothing, but the smallest nod from him made her hesitate. Something in his gaze wasn't like the rest of the terrified diners, as if he knew more than he let on. Not enough, another robber barked, kicking a chair aside. Jewelry. Now crying and trembling erupted again. An old woman's frail hands fumbled as she unclasped her bracelets, the weight of fear heavier than gold. Marcus' fists clenched under the table. For the first time, he realized he wasn't trembling from fear, but from anger. This scene was too familiar. He had seen his community crushed too many times in street corners, in boardrooms, under the weight of contempt dressed up as power. He couldn't stay silent. When the robber stooped to scoop up jewelry, his gun lowered for a split second. That was enough. Marcus shoved his chair back with a thunderous scrape and rose to his feet. The sound cracked through the silence like thunder. Every head turned. The gunman jerked upright, weapon snapping toward Marcus. "You really got a death wish," Marcus inhaled, chest rising, heart slamming, but he held his ground. Voice calm, measured. "You don't need to do this. Take the money. Leave. No one wants blood on the floor." The gunman's laugh was sharp and cruel, echoing through the diner. "You think you're some kind of hero?" Marcus didn't answer. His gaze stayed locked, unshaken. The room trembled under the weight of stillness, broken only by ragged breaths. Emma stepped forward half a step, eyes wide, silently asking, "What are you doing?" Marcus gave the faintest nod. "Trust me." The robber lunged closer, pressing the barrel against Marcus' chest. Cold steel, so close he could smell the metal. The diner held its breath. One squeeze of the trigger, and it would all be over. And then the robber's phone buzzed, a harsh, unnatural vibration. He scowled, pulling it out. On the screen glared a single line of red text, "Location locked. Stand down." His face froze. Confusion, fear. He whipped his head toward his partners. What the hell is this? Marcus didn't flinch. His eyes never left him. He knew the signal had landed. In that instant, the balance shifted. Prey and predator had traded places, and for the first time, the gunman looked uncertain. Emma's eyes widened as the truth hit her. Marcus wasn't just another customer, and in that very moment, everything began to turn. The phone rang shrieking, bright through the thick night-sealed air of the diner. On the skinny robber's cheap screen, a line of red text blinked, "Location locked, stand down." He froze. Then he spun toward Marcus, eyes blazing, the gun trembling in his hand. What did you do?" he spat. Marcus kept his gaze steady, oddly calm, despite the muzzle pressed to his temple. "I told you," he said, voice low, measured. "This isn't in your hands anymore." The robber snarled, panic thin beneath the rage. He grabbed Marcus by the collar and shoved the barrel into his temple so hard Marcus could feel the cold metal bite his skin. Screams rose up around them. Emma held her breath. Her heart felt crushed. Marcus Stahl, straight-backed even with a gun at his head, looked terrified and, somehow, utterly trustworthy. "Stay down," the robber roared, his voice shattering like glass. "Anyone moves, I shoot." No one dared move. The diner turned into an invisible prison. Suddenly the robber shoved Marcus backward and lunged, pointing the gun at Emma. That loudmouth ill shut her up. Emma's knees buckled. Her eyes went wide, no escape. Marcus screamed, a sound like tearing air. He threw himself between the gun and her, taking the barrel pointed at his own chest. The room froze, cries stifling into a thunderous hush. For a heartbeat, everyone expected the shot. The moment was fragile as glass one wrong breath, and the room would be painted red. Marcus felt the metals chill at his ribs. He squeezed his eyes shut for an instant, then opened them, voice hard as steel. "If you pull that trigger, it's over. I'm not bluffing. The exits are locked. You've got 1 minute to choose." The leader staggered for a beat, sweat beading on his temple. He barked at his partners, "Shut up, I'm still in charge here," but his hand was shaken. One of the others hissed, "Something's wrong. My phone's showing the same alert. We're being tracked." Panic spread through the robbers like a fever. They started yelling at the diners, shoving everyone into a corner. Chairs crashed. Sobs and pleas braided into a spiral of chaos. Emma was dragged, hair disheveled, gun muzzle pressed to her head. Her face was half hidden, but her eyes were fixed on Marcus' fear, pleading, and an iron trust all at once. Marcus inhaled hard, his palms slick with sweat. He knew one slip, one hesitation, and Emma would die before him. He stepped forward another pace, voice low and controlled. "Listen to me. Drop the gun. Let her go. He'll come with you. Him who you want." The robber snorted a harsh laugh, voice hoarse. "You think I'm stupid? A guy in a suit eating dinner. What could he be to us?" Marcus tilted his head, a faint lift at the corner of his mouth. "Don't you see? That message on your phone, it's not from the cops. It's from a system I built. You're in the crosshairs of something bigger than you can imagine." Emma's heart hammered. The truth landed like a stone. Marcus wasn't just wealthy. He had tech power, security reach that made even reckless men tremble. Outside, sirens blared, red and blue smeared across the diner windows. A loudspeaker tore through the night. "You are surrounded. Drop your weapons and release the hostages now." The robber dragged Emma closer, the gun pressed to her temple. His voice cracked with desperation. "One more move and she dies right here." People collapsed, sobs rising. The air in the diner tasted like lead. Marcus slowly raised both hands and walked forward. Every step was a bet with fate. His hand shook, but his eyes did not. He leaned down, close enough for only Emma to hear, "Trust me to the end." Then he moved straight into the barrel aimed at her head. Time seemed to stop. Sound fell away. Only heartbeats, the click of the gun's mechanism, and the tiny space between life and death remained. One breath, one choice. Everything would end on that single inhale. The moment Marcus stepped into the barrel of the gun, Riverstone Diner froze solid. Dozens of held breaths fused into a silence so sharp it could cut glass. Then, faint click. The leader had pulled the safety. "Stop right there," he barked, voice raw, chest heaving. "One more step, and you're both dead." Marcus stood still, chest rising and falling with the pounding of his heart. His eyes never wavered. "If you fire that gun," Marcus said slowly, each word slicing the air, "you won't have a way out. Believe me, I've been ready for this moment my entire life." The robber gave a brittle laugh, harsh and hollow. He yanked Emma closer, her slight frame a shield in front of him. Her tangled brown hair covered half her face, but her eyes stayed locked on Marcus, shaking, desperate, yet still trusting. Outside, the loudspeaker boomed again. "You are surrounded. Lay down your weapons. This is your last chance." The leader screamed back, voice cracking, "Shut up. If you come in here, she dies first." His grip tightened, finger pale on the trigger. Marcus inhaled deep. Memories hit him like a flood, the sneers in boardrooms, the times he was stopped at VIP doors because of his skin, the years of swallowing humiliation just to stay composed. He knew this was a line. If he froze, Emma would die. If he moved, he might die, but he'd rather die standing than live watching her fall. His voice thundered through the diner. "Let her go. Am the one you want. Am not just anybody. I am Marcus Green." The name cracked through the room like a blade. The leader blinked, hesitated. A murmur rippled among his crew. Marcus Green, one stammered. "CEO of Onyx Systems." "You mean him Marcus didn't blink?" "That's right. And I'm not just a CEO. The security networks of this city, part of them run through me. You think we didn't see this coming? I let you get this far just to watch you with my own eyes." The leader's mask slipped. Fear flickered. He barked louder, "Desperate lies, you won't scare me." But then red light flared through the windows. A laser dot danced across his chest. Then another. On his men's foreheads, hands, torsos. Snipers. One of them screamed. "They've got us locked." Chaos erupted among them. Panic rattled their voices. The leader's face twisted, rage and terror tangled. He pressed Emma tighter, growling, "If I die, she dies with me." Marcus knew this was the edge, the razor line between life and death. He stepped forward, hands open, his voice steel. "Shoot me, and you lose everything. Drop the gun, and at least you walk out alive." The man's eyes flickered, finger trembling on the trigger. Emma's chest rose in ragged gasps. She clung to Marcus' last words in her mind. "Trust me to the end." Thana, sharp crash. A glass slipped from a trembling diner's hand, shattering on the floor. The robber flinched, his finger clenched. Click, the gun jammed. The room exploded in chaos. Shouts, gunfire, glass raining down. Marcus lunged his body a spear of fury. He seized the leader's arm, twisted hard. The gun clattered across the tile. Emma collapsed to the side, free. Chairs toppled, shots cracked from the others, windows shattered. Acrid smoke burned the air. Marcus slammed the leader to the ground, pinning him with every ounce of strength. Sweat and blood streaked his face as he growled into the man's ear, "It's over. I warned you." The robber thrashed beneath him, eyes wild just as the thunder of boots and the roar of a helicopter closed in from outside. And in that broken, flashing light, Emma saw Marcus for what he truly was, not just a man in a suit, not just a wealthy CEO, but someone who stared death in the eye and stood between her and the bullet. That truth changed everything. The crash of shattering glass ripped through the diner, a flood of flashlights, pounding boots, and the shouts of law enforcement poured into the room choked with gun smoke. FBI, drop your weapons now. Red laser sights darted across the walls, the ceiling, and the trembling bodies of the gunmen. One of them panicked, pulled the trigger bang. The bullet sliced through the air, splintering into the wooden counter. Screams rose from terrified customers still cowering under the tables. Marcus pinned the leader to the floor, both of them struggling in the chaos. Blood streamed from a gash in Marcus' arm, dripping across the tiles, but his eyes never left the pistol lying just inches away. He knew one mistake, and the man could grab it and turn the room into a slaughterhouse. Emma had managed to pull back, but instead of running, she locked her eyes on Marcus' fear and something fiercer mixing inside them. She crouched, snatched up a fallen fruit knife. Her hand shook, but her gaze was sharp as steel. The leader roared, voice breaking, "You'll never take me alive." He twisted violently, trying to throw Marcus beneath him. In that instant, Emma lunged, knife pressed to his throat. Enough. Her voice cracked but cut like a blade. "Let go. I won't hesitate." Both Marcus and the gunman froze. Marcus' eyes flicked to Emma. For the first time, he didn't see a diner waitress. He saw someone burning with raw, inner strength, standing unflinching before death itself. The leader's breath came ragged, his eyes flickering with doubt. He hadn't expected a slender woman to close in on him with such fearless resolve. Yet, instead of surrender, he gave a guttural, blood-tinged laugh. "Girl, you're no different from us. You think you're saving anyone?" Emma's teeth clenched. Her hands shook from the weight of the moment. Marcus laid his hand gently over her wrist and whispered, "Don't let him turn you into a killer. Trust me." The words sliced through the suffocating air like a sudden gust of wind. Then, crack pop. A burst of explosions as police hurled flashbangs inside. White light blazed, thunderous blasts rattled the walls. The gunman screamed, his body seizing. Marcus seized the opening, twisted, slammed him flat, locking him down. In seconds, cold handcuffs clamped around the leader's wrists as the tactical team stormed in. His men were taken down one by one, weapons kicked across the floor. The diner blazed with floodlights and shouted orders. Patrons wept openly, clinging to each other, shaking with relief at having narrowly escaped death. In the hush that followed, Emma collapsed to the floor, the knife still trembling in her grip. Marcus knelt beside her, a steady hand on her shoulder. He searched her eyes that had stared down a gun barrel, eyes that had risen against a killer. "You're not just a waitress, are you?" he murmured. Emma bit her lip, tears streaking down her face. She nodded faintly, her voice quivering. I used to be a combat medic. I've seen too much death, but I never thought I'd face it like this." Marcus froze, the pieces clicking into place, the steady calm, the sharp awareness, the way she read every detail of danger. Emma wasn't ordinary. She carried a past forged on the edge of life and death. He took her trembling hand, squeezing gently, gratitude heavy in his voice. "If it weren't for you, this would have ended in the worst way." Outside, police sirens wailed, blue and red light flashing through shattered windows. But inside, in that fragile quiet after the storm, Only 2 people remained locked in a Gaza black millionaire who had faced prejudice his whole life, and a woman forged in battle who had just saved dozens of lives beside him. They said nothing more, but both knew the story wasn't over. The night wasn't done with them, and what had happened here would leave scars and echoes long after the smoke cleared. The sound of sirens still echoed outside as police escorted the robbers one by one into waiting cars. Inside the caf, the chaos slowly sank into silence, broken only by sobs and the trembling whispers of customers clutching each other, the acrid smell of gunpowder, scorched smoke, and blood painted an indescribably tragic scene. Marcus sat slumped on a broken chair, blood still seeping from the gash on his arm. A medic knelt to check the wound, but his eyes weren't on it. They were fixed on Emma. The slender waitress curled up in the corner, still clutching the knife she hadn't yet let go. Flashes from cameras began to strobe at the doorway. Reporters, TV crews, and dozens of cell phones all pointed inside. Within minutes, the first images of the rescue hit the internet. A video spread like wildfire, Marcus grappling with the ringleader while Emma rushed in, her hand shaking on the blade but her eyes sharp as steel. Headlines blazed across phone screens everywhere. Black millionaire and brave waitress stop bloody heist in New York. The waitress who did the impossible. Who is the mysterious man who risked his life in last night's robbery? Marcus frowned. He was no stranger to camera flashes, but never like this. The entire event had spun out of his control. His business instincts told him at once this was no longer a robbery. It was a looming media crisis. Emma, still trembling, suddenly noticed reporters pushing closer. A microphone was thrust into her face. What went through your mind when you held that knife to his throat? Do you realize you just saved dozens of lives? Emma froze, her eyes red. She shook her head and whispered, I just did what had to be done. But that moment was captured, clipped, and blasted across the internet. Within hours, Emma became an unexpected symbol of courage, a nameless waitress, transformed overnight into the world's spotlight. Marcus was loaded into an ambulance. Emma pulled along for psychological evaluation. As the doors closed, Emma glanced at Marcus with weary eyes. He gave a reassuring smile, though inside another fear gnawed at him. Can she handle this pressure? And me, what truths will be dragged into the light on the way to the hospital? Marcus' phone vibrated non-stop, dozens of messages from his assistant, from the Onyx Systems board, from reporters, even from competitors. Everyone wanted to know why was the CEO of a billion-dollar tech empire at the scene of a robbery, personally tackling the ringleader like a special ops agent. He closed his eyes and sighed. He knew that, in just a few hours, his real identity would be plastered across every headline, and with it would return the familiar whispers. A black man, how could he be in that position? How could he hold that power across from him? Emma stared blankly, haunted by the feel of her trembling hand pressing steel to flesh, the smell of blood, the hatred in the robber's eye-sit, all clung to her. Yet what terrified her most wasn't that memory, but the flashes outside. She had once left the battlefield to live quietly, invisibly. Now, the glare of the public was dragging her back into the storm. By morning, as Marcus lay bandaged in his hospital bed, major newspapers ran the same headline: Marcus Greenblatt, CEO of Onyx Systems, the man in the robbery video. Hero or reckless billionaire businessman revealed to have intervened directly in hostage standoff. A viral tweet from a prominent journalist exploded online. The mysterious man wasn't just a customer. He was Marcus Green, the black millionaire once barred from elite clubs for his skin color. Last night, he saved an entire calf. At the same time, another clip spread Emma's trembling but unflinching moment with the knife. Millions shared it, flooding feeds with emotional captions. This is what true courage looks like. An ordinary waitress did what it took dozens of police officers to achieve. Who is she? We need to know her story. Emma had officially been thrown into the eye of the storm. Marcus clenched his fists as the hospital TV replayed the footage. He had brokered billion-dollar deals, but now he was powerless against the tidal wave of media. His greatest fear was that Emma would be consumed, exploited, turned into clickbait by a ravenous world. In another wing of the hospital, Emma sat hunched, burying her face in her hands. She remembered her days as an army medic, watching friends fall, witnessing the hollow stare of war. She had sworn never to stand in the public eye again, but fate seemed to have other plans. The door opened. Marcus stepped in, sat beside her, and spoke in a steady voice. "Emma, we can't run from this. They'll come for you, dig into every detail. But you have to remember you're not alone. He'll stand with you." Emma lifted her tear-filled eyes. "But you'll be dragged into it, too. I don't want you paying the price for me." Marcus gave a soft smile, his gaze unshaken. "I've been paying prices all my life, but maybe this time we can turn it into an opportunity." As night fell over the city, their faces filled every screen. They were no longer just two ordinary people in a cafe yesterday. They had become symbols, a story the entire world was watching. But with symbols come pressure, responsibility, and merciless scrutiny. In the hospital room, Marcus clasped Emma's hand and whispered, "The real battle is only beginning. In just one night." Emma Reyes was no longer the anonymous waitress at Riverside Diner. Her image appeared on every national news channel, on front-page headlines, and in hundreds of TikTok and YouTube clips. The most widely shared video captured the moment Emma,
get down, everybody get
her
down.
face beaded with sweat, hands trembling but eyes sharp as steel, pressed a knife against the robber's throat. People edited it with dramatic music, cut it in slow motion. Millions of shares, hundreds of thousands of comments praising her as a silent heroine. But only days later, the backlash began. On Twitter, one hashtag spread, "Hero Waitress," but right beside it, another trended, "Irresponsible Waitress." A conservative news channel asked, should an untrained waitress really gamble with the lives of dozens of people? One commentator went further. If that knife slipped, if the robber snapped, the result would have been catastrophic. This isn't heroism, it's recklessness. Emma sat in her tiny apartment, clutching her phone, eyes fixed on the words stabbing into her like blades. The whole world was dissecting her actions and praising, others condemning, and not a single one of them truly knew who she was, or what had driven her that night. Marcus Green was no safer from the storm. He too was pulled into the media frenzy, this time not only as a famous black CEO, but as a man forever shadowed by prejudice. One headline blared, "Black millionaire risked lives just to play hero." A financial outlet speculated, did Marcus Green exploit the incident to boost his image ahead of Onyx Systems merger talks? The board of directors called him voices cold. "Marcus, we need answers. Shareholders are worried this is damaging the company's reputation." Marcus sat in the closed conference room, staring out at the city lights. Pressure crushed his chest. He knew if he stayed silent, others would control the narrative. But if he spoke, every word would be twisted. That night, he met Emma at a near-empty cafe. They sat in the shadowed corner, yellow light falling across their weary faces. Emma whispered, "Maybe I should just disappear. I can't stand the spotlight, the judgment. I only ever wanted a quiet life." Marcus shook his head, voice low. "Emma, you can't keep running. We didn't choose this, but we can choose how to face it." Her eyes brimmed red. "You're so strong, Marcus. But me, I just feel small, lost in this storm." He tightened his grip on her hand. In that moment, he too felt small judged, misunderstood, just as he had his whole life. But he also knew this was their chance to prove that truth. Courage and dignity could outlast the noise. And then came the twist. A strange woman appeared on local TV, claiming to be Emma's former colleague in the military. Her words cut like glass. "Emma Reyes is no hero. She was once disciplined for reckless actions that nearly got her team killed. Stop worshiping someone like that." The revelation spread like wildfire, fueling a storm of doubt. Emma froze as she watched the broadcast. The past she had buried for years was dragged into the harsh light. She trembled. "Marcus, maybe they're right. I'm no hero. I'm just a disaster waiting to happen." Marcus gripped her hand, eyes blazing. "Emma, I saw you that night. You saved us. Don't let a distorted past define who you are today." He knew that if they stayed silent now, both of them would be buried under lies and judgment. He rose, determination burning in his gaze. "Tomorrow, we go public. No more hiding. You deserve to tell the truth in your own voice." Emma looked up, fear mingled with fragile hope. For the first time, she realized Marcus wasn't just a millionaire. He was a man willing to risk his own reputation to protect her. And what was right? Outside, the headlines kept screaming. The public stayed divided. The pressure grew heavier. But in that small room, the two of them made their choice they would no longer run. The battle with bullets was over. Now came the war of words, stares, and invisible judgment. Marcus leaned in, voice steady as stone. "They can call you reckless, but you'll make sure the world knows you're the reason we're all still alive." Emma broke into tears, but this time, in her eyes, there was something new, a flicker of courage to stand and face the storm. That day, the press hall of the Plaza Hotel was packed to the brim. Cameras, microphones, and reporters jostled for every inch of space. The atmosphere felt less like a press briefing and more like a public trial. Online, millions of people waited for the live broadcast. Comment threads scrolled endlessly. What will Emma Reyes say? Can Marcus Green explain himself? Hero or fraud? Backstage, Marcus sat with Emma beside him. She wore a simple, pale blue dress, her hair tied neatly back, her hands still trembling. He gently placed his hand over hers and whispered, "Emma, breathe. You don't have to face this alone. Well, step out together." Emma looked at him, tears shimmering in her eyes, but behind them a spark of resolve. For the first time, she wasn't just a woman caught in the whirlwind of public scrutiny. She was a living witness to the truth. Marcus stepped up to the podium first. The hall erupted in flashing lights. He offered a faint smile, but his voice was steady and firm. "That night, I wasn't a CEO. I was just a man who saw others in danger. I wasn't calculating. I wasn't doing PR. I wasn't strategizing. I acted because lives were at stake." A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. One reporter shouted, "But you endangered dozens of people. Do you take responsibility for that?" Marcus remained calm. "If my actions frightened anyone, I apologize, but I do not regret them. No one in that room deserved to die." He then stepped back, making room for Emma. The hall fell silent. Emma walked forward, her shoulders trembling. The lights were blinding, thousands of eyes piercing into her, but she swallowed her fear. Her voice was soft, yet it carried far. "I am not a hero. I'm not perfect. I made mistakes in the military, and I may make mistakes again. But that night, when I saw a gun pressed to Marcus' head, I had only two choices: stand still and let it end, or try to do something." A reporter interjected, "But don't you think you were reckless? What if you had failed?" Emma paused, her eyes glistening. "Maybe I was reckless, but if no one had acted, we wouldn't be here today to argue about it. I didn't think much. I only thought maybe, just once, I should try to believe in courage." The hall was hushed. Suddenly, the screen behind them lit up. The NYPD spokesperson appeared live, his tone grave. "We have reviewed the full security footage. The truth is, this Marcus Green's actions distracted the ringleader, and Emma Rias' decisive strike saved at least 12 hostages. There is no doubt both of them saved lives." The room erupted. Some reporters even stood and applauded. The skeptics were silenced by undeniable evidence. Emma choked up, turning toward Marcus. He smiled, nodding gently, as if to say, "You've conquered yourself." That very night, social media shifted. Negative hashtags disappeared, replaced by a flood of support. Courage in silence. Stand with Emma. Marcus and Emma. Headlines changed tone across the board. The quiet courage of a waitress. A black CEO teaches the world about dignity. A popular talk show invited them on air. The host asked, "If you could go back, would you do it again?" Marcus smiled, "I would. And I believe Emma would too." Emma smiled and nodded, her first time meeting the spotlight without flinching. Weeks later, Emma returned to Riverside Diner. Customers lined up just to see her, take pictures, and thank her. Yet Emma remained the same, serving coffee and pie with quiet grace. Marcus stopped by, sitting at his familiar corner table. He watched Emma laugh softly with an elderly guest, his eyes full of pride. He thought to himself, "She didn't just save us. She saved me. She restored the faith in humanity I thought I had lost." As he left the diner, Marcus paused at the door, speaking softly, as though leaving a message for anyone who would hear their story. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is when you tremble but still move forward. And sometimes, it's the most ordinary people who teach us the most extraordinary lessons. In the end, the story of Marcus and Emma isn't just about a robbery. It's about what happens when ordinary people, in extraordinary circumstances, choose courage over fear, dignity over silence, and compassion over despair. Emma reminded us that calmness is not weakness. It is strength in its purest form. In the middle of chaos, her steady heart gave others hope. And Marcus showed us that true wealth is not measured by dollars, but by the choices we make when no one is watching. His power wasn't in his fortune, it was in his humanity. Life will rarely place us in a diner under siege, but every day we face smaller battles, moments when anger tempts us, when fear pushes us back, when silence feels safer than truth. The question is, will we choose to stand steady, to use our voice, to protect what is right? If there's one lesson to carry forward, It's this courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it's the quiet strength to remain calm and the resolve to act with love when the world expects fear. Thank you, truly, for joining me in this journey tonight. If this story touched your heart, I invite you to like, share, and subscribe not just to support the channel, but to spread stories that remind us of the power we all carry inside. Because maybe, just maybe, someone out there needs this reminder today.